So earlier this afternoon, all throughout Christendom, I don't care which denomination you belong to, but if you bear the name Christian, there was probably a Christmas pageant this afternoon. Now you all start smiling when I said that, right? Because when I say the word Christmas pageant, your nostalgia meters go off the chain. And you go back into Christmas pageants past, right? Maybe you were in one. Maybe your kids were in one, right? Where does your mind go? It first begins by a really cute Joseph in a bathrobe and a really cute Mary with a blue veil with a baby doll underneath her dress. First coming into the scene and knocking on doors, right? Because there's no room for them in the inn. And all of a sudden, a little kid who's an innkeeper comes out in his bathrobe and a towel around his head to say there's no room. And then sometimes another child dressed as his wife says, "What do you mean there's no room? There's the stable." Right? And so all of a sudden the scene changes to the stable, where it's filled with children that have cotton balls glued to their face. Right? And they're dressed like sheep with little socks on their hand, and some of them bad, a little too loud than others. And all of a sudden this ragtag group of shepherds shows up, right? And they're all once again in bathrobes with towels around their heads. And sometimes they're prodded by an angel. Go see the baby, right? Best little Christmas pageant ever has that. She's beating them over the heads to get them to the nativity, right? And this is this beautiful kind of quaint, sentimental, nice scene. Put your seatbelts on. I don't like Christmas pageants. Christmas blasphemy, Father Jason. It's not that I don't like children engaged in the gospel. I do. I love when our children teach us the gospel. They do that all the time. Kids are the best preachers ever. The reason I don't like Christmas pageants is because, especially in the last 50 years, I think it has robbed the gospel of what the gospel is trying to convey in the infancy stories. We have settled for this very cute, quaint, sentimental version of Christmas that we can keep in a nice little box because we know all the parts because we acted it out as little kids. And so that must be it. And it's a cute story that we just look at and seem warm and fuzzy. But in reality, when you read the gospel narratives, they are meant to confront us, convert us, and then comfort us. Luke, and I'm pointing over here because this scene over here in our nativity scene really is Luke with the shepherds. And on this side is Matthew with the Magi that we'll hear about in several more days. And I always say this is John, where the Word was made flesh. All three of these different manifestations of Christ's birth are meant to jar you at its core. Christ didn't come to be nice. He came on a mission. And so when you begin to read the gospel tonight that Deacon Paul proclaimed, notice how it opens up. It talks about two major players on the political scene. Caesar Augustus and Quirinius. They both necessarily weren't the best folks. Quirinius was nasty. Caesar Augustus forced a peace over the whole world, but it was ruled by force from the Romans. When early Christians would have heard those two people played out at the beginning, they knew something was shockingly happening. Christ has come to bring a kingdom. That's the first thing of the gospel narratives. Christ's kingdom will be different. And if you notice, we've already sung about it several times. Born the King of the angels. We will sing, "Joy to the world, the Lord has come, let earth receive her King." Hark the herald angels sing, "Glory to the newborn King." Our Christmas carols are soaked with this understanding of kingship. The king has come to establish his kingdom, and it's going to look way different than Caesar Augustus and Quirinius. I've been talking about it ad nauseum, and I'm going to talk about it. You can put it on my tombstone. Christ has come to destroy the kingdom of darkness. Christ has come to destroy sin and death. Christ has come to usher us back into the Garden of Eden. Christ has come to literally kick the darkness until it bleeds daylight. Christ has come to destroy that which binds us. Rick read in that beautiful thing from Isaiah, the rod on their staff, the rod on their shoulders, their taskmasters is broken. Christ has come to free us from sin and death. His blessings go as far as the curse is found. This is all about his kingdom coming to reign, and it looks nothing like what we think a kingdom is. And so it confronts us. Look at what we think kingdoms are. It's power over people. It's lordship over people. It's slavery. The kingdom of darkness is meant to bind us, and Christ's kingdom is the opposite. It's meant to convert us to a deeper understanding of what Christ's kingship is. And so the story opens up in Luke, not right at the beginning of Bethlehem, but what we heard this morning, where an angel is sent to a virgin, a 14-year-old girl in Nazareth. And the first words the angel says is, "Do not be afraid." Notice that phrase? It's everywhere. You heard the angels say it to the shepherds, "Do not be afraid." Because the first thing that the empire of darkness does is bring in fear. When Adam and Eve fell in the garden, they jumped in the bushes. They were scared. Our Christmas story is about a God who strips us away from the fear. So we should be confronted right away with the fears you have in your life. What are the fears tonight that the Christ child is coming to heal? What are the fears that constantly keep you from being the person that Christ has created you to be? It's that he's come to destroy. And if we get converted, we'll find comfort and joy. Mary and Joseph enter into Bethlehem. And as that Christmas pageant scene open up, they're going door to door knocking, right? You see those images. There's no room. Motel 6 in Bethlehem is booked. Everyone is home, right? That's not what the gospel says. Luke uses a very particular word. There was no room for them in the kataluma. What's a kataluma? It's not a hotel. The word for hotel is pandokleon. Luke does use it when he talks about the Good Samaritan story, where the Good Samaritan takes the victim that's fallen to the robbers and takes him to a pandokleton, an actual lodge where he finds rest and healed. Luke does not use that word. Luke uses the word kataluma. What's a kataluma? It's a guest room. When archaeologists have dug around in Bethlehem, homes were built normally on a second floor. There was space for eating, there was space for family, and then there was the kataluma. It was the guest room. They would carve into the hillside underneath of it all, a place where they would keep their stable for their animals, because animals were considered property. It was also a way to heat the building. So the animals were kept in the basement with a manger that was made of stone. And atop of them was where the family lived. And there was always a guest room because of hospitality. And that guest room, that kataluma, was filled. We don't know why. We just know there wasn't any room. So Mary had to go down underneath the building to where the animals were to have the Christ child. Why wasn't there room in the kataluma? I can speculate. As a priest, we know human nature pretty good. We're confronted with it all the time. Human nature hasn't changed. I'm sure there was Aunt Ruth and Uncle Jebediah who aren't going to give up their space for that woman who's married to Joseph who had a baby with an angel. Yeah, right, Joe? You're going to believe that story? She can have the kid in the basement. Notice how the story confronts us with how we treat people, how we label people, but also our dysfunction. We always have a tendency to think God runs from our dysfunction because we're not worthy of it. If we're sinners, we got to do stuff right to get to God. And in reality, if the Christmas story, it's the opposite. Christ runs right into the middle of our Christmas dysfunction. He runs into the middle of it to heal it. He comes into the midst of our families who are broken and who are wounded to bring us peace. That's what brings us comfort. But it also should shake us to the core on how we treat people. And then look where he's laid. We think it's cute, right? Oh, he was laid in a little manger. We have those images of the Christmas pageants, right? There was that Facebook meme that the angel and the Blessed Mother were fighting over who got to hold Jesus, right? To lay him in the manger. Just think about this. The very God who created everything, the one who is full of power, who is full of might, that made the breath in your lungs, that made the cells in your body, that flung out the stars like marbles, came to dwell and didn't sit on a throne in the middle of Jerusalem and didn't come with lavish gold vestments and a whole retinue of people. He was born in the middle of a dirty, manure-filled manger. That should totally turn us on our end. Look at our world. It's filled with power. You're taught to claw your way to the top. You're taught to be somebody by making a name for yourself. The richer get rich, the poor get poorer. Right? That's not Christmas. The very mighty God takes off his crown of glory and comes to rest among the lowest of the low and the poorest of the poor. That's our God of love. Who were the first people that run to the manger? The story continues. The angels appear to the shepherds. We go back to that sentimental bathrobes, right? Who are the shepherds? There was a show called The Worst Jobs of Bethlehem. The shepherds would be number one. Shepherds throughout the Old Testament were seen as mighty people. Abel was a shepherd. Moses was a shepherd. All the great patriarchs were shepherds. David was a shepherd. But by the time we get to Jesus, not so much. The shepherds were considered the lowest of the social ladder. Some of them were considered robbers and thieves. Bethlehem was 3 miles from Jerusalem. It was a place where all of the lambs that would be slaughtered in the temple were raised. And they were raised by those men. By men that the society hated because they were considered lower class. And they were also hated by the religious folk because they were deemed unclean. Shepherds deal with dead sheep, stuff that comes out of sheep. In fact, there was a tower that was built on the road to Bethlehem where the priests would come down from Jerusalem and crawl up on to look at the flocks because they didn't want to get near the shepherds who were deemed unclean. So the people who are raising the lambs, this one here, who looks like an Abercrombie model, this one here has a lamb on his shoulders. That lamb would be slaughtered in the temple during Passover. But that person holding it wasn't able to even worship in the temple because he was unclean. And he would have to go through a series of mikvah baths to even participate in the service. They were disliked by the religious folks. They were disliked by society. And it's those people that the angel appears to first and says, I bring you tidings of great joy. For unto you is born this day a Savior. That's our God of love, who comes to the outcast and the marginalized. It should confront us with how we treat people, how we treat those less fortunate, how we treat those who are deemed on the margins of society. Because Jesus comes tonight to bring those to the manger. Do you see why I don't like Christmas pageants? Because the gospel should shake you to its core, not make you comfortable. It should convert you to the reality of the love that's born for us this night. The mighty love that continues to reach out, outside of our brokenness, outside of our bondage, to bring us back to Him and bring all of us back to Him together. Think of your different Christmas pageant this year. Not the cute sentimentalism, but the gospel of Jesus Christ. The powerful and unconditional love, the eternal Word of the Father, now in flesh appearing, so that we could touch Him, we can embrace Him. Every single baby Jesus in every single manger, and you can go right back to your house tonight and look, has his arms out like this, because He's running to grab you. He wants you to pick Him up. He wants you to pick up this gospel message and live it. He wants you to be the light of the world. And so tonight we join with the angels. We join with the outcast shepherds. We join with those two who were no room in the Cataluma to worship the eternal Word of the Father who has come among us, that has dwelt among us. We have seen his glory. The light will always conquer the darkness if Christians chose to actually live the Christmas message.